Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Geoff Mosher today from the Inside the Birds podcast, which you can get on all podcasting platforms and their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds, the latest ITB, talking a little bit about the depth chart and things happening there. We'll get Geoff Mosher's take on that first depth chart that got released yesterday as the Eagles get ready for the Ravens on Friday night, and you can hear the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. A couple text messages coming in on the Birds. I like the one we read last hour. Win week 1 by a lot, and it's all forgotten passes to pass. I didn't even add the part by a lot. I don't even know that you need to win by a lot. You beat the Green Bay Packers to open up the season, and I think that changes a lot of the dynamics of everything that happened last year. The way the season ended, 32-9, I think that was the score, in Tampa Bay, and just getting beat up and blown out of the playoffs to just kind of end a disappointing season. It was a great season at 10-1, and it was a disappointing season losing 6 out of 7. But if you come out and beat Green Bay, a team that went to the NFC Championship game last year, it really kind of, I think, solidifies that last season's behind you and you're ready to move on from all that and get ready for the new season here. Another part about that, another text message here, Colin LBI says, why I think Nick should have been replaced. I'm done beating the dead horse. It's more concerning to hear this much about Hurts. I agree with that. I think this story tells me more about Hurts almost and his insecurities than it does about Sirianni. Now we look at it from this perspective. By the way, the Packers lost in the second round, not the NFC Championship game. But there was a lot in there that concerned me more about Hurts, the improviser. Hurts, who's supposed to be the leader knows to listen to the leader. There's the leader and there's a leader. The leader's the coach. A leader's the quarterback. And for the quarterback to be the leader of the players, to improvise and think that's okay, that to me is more concerning. Now, there are times where the quarterback is allowed to improvise and allowed to have that ability to go up and call a play or change a play at the line of scrimmage. For whatever reason, the Eagles didn't hand that to him just yet. And McMullen explained it in the 3 o'clock hour a little bit about, Jason Kelce being on the team. And he did a lot of that stuff, calling out the plays, calling out the coverage, and a lot of stuff like that. Maybe things change now with Kellen Moore and Cam Jurgens. But I thought that was a good conversation. If you missed it, you're watching the live video at Mike Gill Show on the X platform, formerly known as Twitter. Use the hashtag SBLive, and you can go back and watch that. We'll try to get it up on our YouTube channel here shortly. But Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast is here. We got a lot, as obviously Friday night, Eagles and Ravens, 4 straight days of practice. The unofficial depth chart is out. What does it say? And, of course, a big story over at ESPN from a guy that you know, Jeff, Tim McManus, who puts out this article about the relationship between Hurts and Sirianni. A lot of people felt that there was something there, that maybe these guys are not seeing eye to eye. Was there anything in that story, though, that really is telling to you that makes you think this could linger into 2024?
I think things only linger, Mike, if the team's losing and not doing well, and if offensively the Eagles aren't performing to the standard that they should, which, we've talked about this. They have every reason to be no lower than 3rd or 4th, right, in the NFL on offense. There's only a couple of teams I can think of that have as much offensive firepower as they do, or have a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, or the 49ers with their firepower, the Lions maybe, the Miami Dolphins. This should be a top 5 offense and no lower with the weapons that they have. But if they are not, then obviously, even going back to what happened last year, there'll be changes, there'll be discontent, there'll be reasons for it that could cause friction. I've always felt, I think we've talked about this, that it's not about a dislike for each other, but that they're wired differently. Nick Sirianni is someone who leaves it all out there for everyone to see. Jalen Hurts is a lot more close to the vest, and maybe that's a clash of style, but I never felt that there was a disrespect toward either. Just don't think that they're wired the same way, and it wasn't surprising. And I've known a little bit about guy, having a kind of a buffer in Brian Johnson, which is a difficult position for Brian Johnson to be in. In fact, it reminds me of we've had John DeFilippo, the Eagles quarterbacks coach from 2017 when they won the Super Bowl. He's been on the Inside the Birds platform a lot, mostly for our Patreon members. And, he told us there was a place that he coached where he had to be the buffer between the quarterback and the head coach. And he had to force them to have lunch on certain days just so that they would get to know each other. I don't think that was the situation last year, but obviously when you have guys wired differently, you need communication to be there. You need guys to be on the same page so that they have a mutual understanding of what's expected. And of course, both have to be doing their jobs well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in the article. Obviously, some of the standouts. One thing to me is, hey, Nick addressed it. Quotes from, the sourcing saying it was a breath of fresh air. He kind of owned it, and maybe that kind of helped everything. But I look at some of the things that happened last year, and I get more frustrated with the stuff I heard about Hurts. Improvising, not, respecting Sirianni, the X and O chops, and then doing his own thing from time to time. I said it felt like, two friends from high school got a chance to get this job, and they thought they were going to get to do their own thing, and the boss was like, you guys aren't going to take this thing and do what you want with it. You still got to kind of keep it within what we've been successful with, and they didn't like that answer.
I think this stuff happens a lot. I mean, not just in football, but in a lot of different organizations, but maybe more so in football because a quarterback is someone who has so much power over an offense, right? So think about this. You're the quarterback. You get a play called in from the offensive coordinator. Your head coach says, no, let's go with this instead. You're the quarterback. You actually want more autonomy over the offense that you don't have. So you got choice A, B, and C, right? Choice A, you go with the original call. Choice B, you go with what your head coach is because the head coach. Or choice C, you think your best opportunity is to make a play that you, based on what you see out of the defense, is best. Well, when all that doesn't go right, then everybody shares responsibility. So this is not just a Nick Sirianni issue or a Brian Johnson issue or a Jalen Hurts issue. It was all three of them at times. And yeah, the freelancing can be frustrating, but it's only frustrating if you think the freelancing was worse than the actual play call, right? So that's why the offense was so discombobulated at times last year. But the big thing was that it was stale last year. It was too much 2x2. It was too much of the same route concepts. And that's what the story pointed out, is that other NFL coaches who, the team were enlisting their advice of at the end were saying, you're doing too much of the same thing, which we were saying that by November.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, listen, that is where it got a little interesting is, hey, you have a situation where with somebody just being like, we're trying to do something because it's not working, or we're trying to do more because, part of it is, hey, he wanted to prove he was worth $250 million on every single throw, that he felt he should have been held in a higher regard by the coach.
Yeah, and that's, to me, that's not an answer that I can provide. When the Eagles went to the Super Bowl and Jalen Hurts played at an MVP level, we were told that the offense went from its original version to sort of scale down as the season got on to cater to Jalen Hurts' strength as, at that point, more of a half-field reader and runner, more so than a full-field reader. So, is it Jalen who wants to play that differently? Was it Nick who wanted to run more of the Shane Steichen-like offense? Was it Brian Johnson who was trying to evolve, sort of meet both ways? I mean, in that regards, you hope the ego doesn't get in the way. And right now, the most dominant voice in the room has to be Kellen Moore's. The instructions have to be followed that are his and trickle down. If Kellen Moore wants to give Jalen Hurts more autonomy, and it sounds like he already has because Jason Kelce is no longer the center, and I think he even saw that in the open practice. I don't know if you saw it. Looked to me like Jalen was audibling a lot or changing plays at certain times. Then that should be Kellen Moore's decision, and Kellen Moore's only. And Nick Sirianni should be the guy who says, yes, I agree with that, because that's why Kellen Moore is here. If you're standing in Kellen's way of doing that as a head coach, then you're becoming part of the problem, I would think, because now you're not allowing your offensive coordinator, who is here to preside over the offense, to make all those decisions. So to me, the voice has to be Kellen Moore's.
Yeah, we're talking with Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, and of course, Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. And the interesting part about this is, Sirianni kind of in a lame duck situation, and now has to be almost a different version of the guy that had so much success. It's an odd spot to be in. I went to a Super Bowl. I've been to the playoffs 3 times, and you want me to be something different than that guy?
Maybe. I mean, he was different last year because 2 years ago when they went to the Super Bowl, I don't think he was as overruling with the right. He trusted Shane Steichen. They had coached together. The offense was doing well. There probably wasn't a whole lot of reason to be like, no, Shane, let's change this 3rd and 5 to a pass instead of a run. Whereas as the story from Tim McManus and Jeremy Fowler showed, that there were times where he felt like he had to be a little bit more of a presence. So again, Kellen Moore is here. He's got a track record. He's had number 1 offenses before. It's Nick Sirianni's job now to take that step back again and say, I'm only going to get involved here if something's going wrong, right? Because I'm the head coach. I got to fix things that go wrong. But if Kellen Moore's doing his thing and he wants to run the ball on 3rd and 5 and it's week 1, I'm not going to be overruling.
Well, it's like the question that somebody asked him back in the camps. Well, then what is your job? What are you doing?
Well, and you and I know, like, you don't have to call plays or overrule plays or change plays
right.
to be a good head coach or involved in the game planning. They've got to draw up plays. They've got to come up with conceptually what they want to do, and that is not one person. That is a meeting room full of people throughout the week.
The Eagles depth chart was unofficially, by the way, released yesterday. A couple of the highlights that really are out there, I guess, shows the battles where they are. Linebacker, where they didn't really have 2 starters. They had 4 starters. White, Dean, Bond, Trotter. Your takeaway from that?
It's rough, man. My takeaway is what we've been told is that the Eagles linebackers, if you were to divide their responsibilities in three boxes, right, which is, can they get downhill against the run? Check. Can they blitz? Check. Can they cover? I'm not saying check. And in fact, I would say that's where the big red circle is drawn. And by the way, coverage isn't just 1/3 of the job. In a passing league, that might be sometimes the most important part of the job. But Nakobe Dean struggles there. Devin White struggles there. Now, we've been told that Zach Bond, when you compare him to someone who's never played the position before like him, he's actually done pretty well instinctively, knows where to be, hustles. But again, you're comparing that to people who are just learning the position, not comparing it to someone who's played the position for 3 or 4 years in the NFL and also played it in college, right? So when you compare him to standard inside NFL linebacker, I think that's a different conversation. It's a roundabout way of saying coverage is not great. Now, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., right, of all the guys, may have the most natural understanding of how to be an inside linebacker, how to cover, how to get downhill, how to blitz, because he's born to be one, right? His father, Jeremiah Trotter Sr., everybody knows him. He played it in high school, in college. He's playing it now. That might be the most natural. But of course, Mike, you can't have good things as an Eagles fan and want to be and linebacker, right? So of all the people, he may understand how to play the position the best, but guess what? He's athletically doesn't compare to the 3 guys we just talked about. His speed, his measurables. But Mike, TJ Edwards didn't either, right?
Yeah.
TJ Edwards was undrafted for a reason. His testing wasn't great, but it's his instincts and his football IQ and his ability to limit mistakes that made him a very good starter for the Eagles, right? I wouldn't put it past Jeremiah Trotter Jr. once we get to the maybe not week 1, right? Because they got a plan here, but I wouldn't put it past Jeremiah Trotter Jr. to be their best version of what they're looking for at that position and eventually become a starter. Now, that doesn't mean, by the way, that's a great thing for Jeremiah Trotter and a good thing for developing a young kid who's a 5th-round pick. Doesn't mean you're going to be great at the position. It just means that might be your best option.
Your best option, right.
Right.
The other one that I guess you can read in or try to anyway is Slay is at one corner, but it's Rodgers and Ringo that are listed as first-teamers opposite, and Mitchell as the backup to Slay. Maddox as the nickel with Tyler Hall backing him up. So how do you read into the 2 guys, Rodgers and Ringo, and Mitchell on the other side behind Slay, not across from him?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're, again, these depth charts are written by like the public relations staff, right? I mean, I think they're trying to give you, if they had to play a game today, Is Quinyon Mitchell really the starting nickel back? Probably not. Avonte Maddox has all that experience. He's healthy for the moment. And then it's really a coin flip between Rodgers and Ringo, although I would tell you I think Rodgers, because of his speed and his hip fluidity, is probably going to get that job. Now he's short. He's 5'9", and that's tough on the outside, and that's why Keely Ringo is also getting a fair amount of looks there. He's bigger. He's more physical. Not as fluid, though. So you kind of have what's like when Howie says you got chocolate and vanilla and you like both, so you got to pick one. They're both decent candidates, but I think they've got to let this thing play out here over the preseason to figure out exactly which one they would want as an outside corner. And then eventually, if they do get Cooper DeJean back and start working him in the nickel, does that mean they start taking more looks at Quinyon Mitchell on the outside? We got a lot of time left.
Yeah, we do. And we have 3 games, although Friday night could be in peril with the weather, I guess. I don't know what it's going to be like in Baltimore. They're canceling things all over the place with this weather coming in on a Friday, or maybe they move it to another day. I don't know. Would they move it or just cancel it altogether? But they do have the first preseason game on Friday night. The rest of the defensive depth chart, pretty normal. Gardner Johnson, who's been out, Reed Blankenship are your safeties. Interestingly enough, though, James Bradbury and Tristan McCollum are listed as the safeties. Apparently, Maddox was the first team safety today with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson out. So, I don't know, is Maddox in the mix at safety as well as slot corner?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think that, like, you're just talking about how many defensive backs are the team going to keep, right? And you want some versatility among the backups. So, if they decide going into week 1 that they think their best combination of a base defense or base nickel defense would be Slay on the outside, Rodgers on the outside, and Quinyon Mitchell as their nickel back, but they still think Avonte Maddox can play and want to keep him on the team, then now you've got Maddox as a potential safety to play as a third safety, right, when you're in dime if you want, especially if Cooper DeJean's not ready at that point and Sidney Brown's not ready, and you're looking for a little bit more coverage than Sidney Brown can give you. I think that makes Maddox a really good – actually, Maddox would almost be in that situation your number 2 safety, and maybe you move Reed around a little bit in the box or something. I mean, it gives him that versatility. But I think they would play Maddox if he makes the 53 in a variety of roles there.
Yeah, on the offensive side, I don't know if there was anything that stood out. Obviously, Steen was definitively listed as the 1 and Becton as the 2. I would imagine – that's a fluid situation, or is Steen 100%. The guy?
No, it's fluid. It's fluid. I mean, I'm sure they went into camp saying, let's hope that Steen stays really healthy and shows us what he's got, but he hasn't. Just got back to practice on, what's today? Today's Thursday, right? So
today's Wednesday.
Today's Wednesday. Sorry, by the way, you're talking about rain. I was in West Palm Beach. It took me 11 hours to get home yesterday after already being stuck there for 2 days because of the weather. And then just cancellations and delays. And so I'm a little jet lagged myself. But, yeah, I don't know what date it is, but Steen got back to practice. He was limited. This thing has got to play itself out. They need more. I think they need to see Steen more, and they certainly need to see Becton more.
Yep. Offensively, other than that, I mean, I guess just the placement of the wideouts. You got Campbell, who's hurt.
The slot receiver is a big issue here.
Campbell, who's hurt. You got Campbell, who's hurt right now, listed as the starting guy there. But behind him, I mean, you got Covey as the second slot. You got Wilson behind Brown, and you got Ross behind Smith, which is just because you thought Ross might be the guy, but maybe there's nothing to read into where they placed him on this, it appears.
Yeah, I mean, really just focus on who's playing the slot and who's playing the tight end outside of Dallas Goedert. Focusing on how much 11 personnel they're playing versus 12 personnel. And when they are playing 12 personnel, which is 2 tight ends, 2 receivers and 1 running back, is that second tight end, does he block at all? Can Grant Calcaterra give him a little bit of blocking? Can E.J. Jenkins, a 250-pound guy, give him a little bit of blocking? What's C.J. Uzomah? We know he can block, but does he have any juke? Can he give you anything in the passing game anymore? Because there are ways, Mike, where they can play 12 personnel, but really with an 11 personnel feel, meaning if Grant Calcaterra is out there with Dallas Goedert, Goddard's your inline tight end, Calcaterra is flexed. He's kind of like a slot receiver in that regard, and he can stretch the field for you a little bit. Mm-hmm. But if you want to run at 11 personnel, you need somebody who can block. I don't think Paris Campbell can block. Britton Covey has had a really nice camp, and he can stretch the field and move the chains, but I don't know if he can be a full-time slot receiver if you want to run at 11 personnel because I just don't know how much he can get his body and take that punishment. Devontae Smith is not a guy you want in there taking that punishment. You want him on the outside more. So they got Johnny Wilson's had a really nice camp, 6'7". He can certainly get his body on people, but can you trust a 6'7" rookie? Anaya Smith's got to start catching passes. So you got to keep your eye on all these guys.
Yep, and I guess, I don't know, do you think it's something, can Shipley supplant Gainwell and be a bigger part of the offense, or is this Gainwell and Barkley, or Barkley, obviously, and Gainwell?
Yeah, I don't see it happening by week one unless Will Shipley has a dramatic turnaround. I mean, I think Will Shipley gives you a nice pass catching, gives you some juice, maybe a little more explosion than Gainwell, but his pass protection needs to come a lot further if you're going to want to hit, chip into Kenny Gainwell's time.
All right. And then, of course, you got little battles on the line. You got who's going to be the swing. Fred Johnson looks like he's there. Trevor Keegan's a rookie. Hennessy, you brought in a veteran. Mac Sharping, a veteran we haven't heard much about. They brought in Nick Gates. You got Dylan McMahon, who was a draft pick. Brett Toth has been all over the offensive line. So those 3 games, you're going to hear a lot or see a lot of those guys, I would imagine.
A ton. You mentioned a bunch of names that you can sort of mix and match and put in a lot of different places. So very, very interesting to see how that works out during the preseason games.
All right, that's all starts Friday night, weather permitting. 97.3 ESPN's coverage at 7:30. Merrill Reese, Mike Quick have the call. Eagles and the Ravens, and we'll have plenty more on football at 4 the rest of the week here on the Sports Best. Geoff Mosher is back in the house. We'll talk to him next week here on Football at 4. Thanks, man.
You got it, Mike. Take care.
All right, there's Mosher.